Fantastic. Well, again, thank you guys for letting me come in. I start all of my presentations have this front page on them with the adventures in ham radio with K8DV because it's just a small representation of all the things or a lot of the things that I have done in the hobby over time. And I have had a extremely enjoyable run of almost 50 years so far. And I've got to thank my dad for bringing me into the hobby as a young kid, and that young kid just trying to get approval from his father. So, and here we are today. All right, so DXCC, what is it, and how to join in on all the fun. So first of all, before we begin, the information that I've got here and I'm going to be presenting tonight is based on my own experiences on my own DXCC journey, as well as questions that I've got from card checking and so forth, through people just getting started or even people that's been DXing for some time. A lot of what you're going to see is based on those questions that I've got over time. In my presentations, I always bury an Easter egg. So I expect all of you to be on the lookout for it, and I wonder who'll be the first to spot it. And again, it truly is my pleasure to be here this evening and share this presentation on DXCC with your club. I'm not going to go over all of this, but this is just a quick bio of me, who I am. First license, of course, as I said, in 78. The rest of it's self-explanatory. Most of it's around the awards and some of the stuff that I've been involved with. Thank you for the great introduction. And all of these totals are always fluctuating and always moving. And it's a lifetime journey for sure. So how many of us have got that question, and how do you answer it? So how far can you talk on that radio? I mean, I'm sure all of us in this room and on this phone have all had that question at one time or other. Isn't it just like CB? How far can you really talk on it? Well, you know, I don't know. I usually just say all over the world, and they usually leave confused. I don't know why, but that's how it goes. All right. So when you're talking about DXCC, you got to ask yourself to enjoy a challenge. The DXCC or the DX Century Club is the first and the premier operating award in all of ham radio. Now, some people would disagree with me, but that's their claim to fame. And I have to somewhat agree with that as well. To earn DXCC, of course, it's a contact and confirm 100 what they call entities, not countries, but countries are entities, but entities are your islands and all the other territories and everything that belongs to all the different countries. So you can't call all those countries, so they call them entities. Like Alaska is counted as a separate entity in DXCC, but it's not a country. So you got to contact and confirm 100 initially to get your DXCC. All right, so what is the DXCC and the DX Century Club anyway? Well, it was founded by Clinton B. DeSoto, W1CBD, and it was first mentioned in a QST article in 1935 labeled How to Count Countries Worked. It was considered to be a new DX scoring system. It officially started in September of 1937. It provided a challenging goal for hams to contact and confirm new countries throughout the various geographical and political entities worldwide. You got to remember that the official DXCC is only issued via the ARRL. And currently, I want to say that DXCC numbers are up around 80,000, I believe. Well, the first one was issued back in 1937 to W8CRA in Pennsylvania, because that was pre-World War II, and that's when Pennsylvania was in 8-land. And there's a copy of his original QSL card down there in the bottom right-hand corner. I found that pretty interesting to be able to come across that. All right, so when you're talking about DXCC, of course, there's 340 entities, but you got to work that first 100 first. So contacting your first 100 DXCC entities, it's challenging but not difficult. Contest weekends can offer lots of DX, such as CQ Worldwide, ARL International, um, uh, the Worldwide Prefix Contest, and a host of others that are out there as well. As a casual operator, you can earn DXCC pretty easily yourself. You can get on, just call CQDX often, like get on 20 meters, call CQDX. You'll be surprised what will happen. There is one caveat here. You do have to confirm either by paper QSLs or by Logbook of the World. And Logbook of the World could be a whole presentation on its own, but it's essentially a system housed by the ARRL to allow you to upload your logs, and then it does a blind match with others that upload their logs to give you what they call a QSL credit on their system that you can then apply and use towards the ARRL awards, whether it's DXCC, WES, BUCC, and others. So at first 100, well, about 150 or so of that, of the total of 340 are pretty common. You know, that's the things like, yep, the USA, even for you, counts as a DX entity or toward your total. Alaska, Hawaii, you know, Puerto Rico, Canada, all the different things down in the Caribbean. All of those are all pretty common, pretty easy to work. Most of Europe is pretty easy to work, and it's pretty common. And don't forget, DX stations may want to contact you as well. They may need your country, your county, your state, you know, who knows? Maybe they want the prefix. You got some, you know, like a 2x1 call. I heard a couple of those introduce themselves tonight. They can be pretty popular sometimes on the prefix hunters. Some DX stations, and I've had this happen to me, they're just wanting to practice English. And I'm like, I'm probably not your best choice to practice English, but I'll give it a shot. And then most of the QSOs are pretty short. It might be your name. It might just be signal report, might be the weather, could be your QTH, equipment you're running, that kind of thing. So continuing on about this first 100, the first 100 can pretty easily be accomplished using sideband and or digital. So digital modes such as FT8, they can ease the journey because you don't have to worry about the dialect or any of that kind of thing that sometimes can be hard to understand from some of the stations overseas and so forth. After the first 100, learning CW can be helpful, or at least enough to know your call sign. And by all means, use spotting network. I can remember my dad to this day, and he's been gone several years, telling me that all's fair in love and war and chasing DX. So the station, when we talk about a station for DXCC, excuse me, even a modest station can earn DXCC. 100 watts in a wire, you can work a tremendous amount of DX with that. No matter what the station, it takes getting on the air, it takes patience, it takes some persistence, and yeah, there's even a little bit of luck involved. So what about the station? Well, when I talk about people and they ask me about, well, what kind of station do I need? Well, it doesn't matter whether it's old, somewhat old, vintage, new, just off the shelf, just out of the box. It needs to be something that's comfortable to you. And I always suggest to folks, always start with 100 watts because QRP is certainly a special skill set. And after my almost 50 years of Hammond, I still don't have the QRP skill set. Variable filtering, passband, notch, all that kind of thing you find on your new transceivers is handy to have. Speech processor, keyer, DVR, they're helpful, but not necessarily an absolute necessity. Keep your manual nearby, so you know, because a lot of times chasing DX, I run an Elecraft K3 myself, and I don't care to tell you that radio is a lot smarter than I am, and I keep the manual on a tab on my homepage on my computer, so that if I decide I need to make a change, or for some reason I've clicked the wrong button and got it into some kind of funny mode that I don't know how to get it out of, I've got the manual handy to look at. I'm not one to make recommendation. That's a whole lot like a Ford and Chevrolet kind of thing, you know. So what about accessories? Well, a lot of guys would say, I'm chasing DX. I got to have an amplifier. I'll be honest with you. I have 333 current confirmed countries, and most of those I've worked with 100 watts or less, 80 to 100 watts. And so, and I have an amplifier, but it's like I always try to work them barefoot if I can first. A tuner, manual or automatic, is nice to have, especially if you're using a multiband wire antenna. If you're using a solid state amp, it's almost a have to have. A headset with boom mic is always handy because it's good to be hands free so you can type and do what you have to do or send code with a key or whatever you might be doing. And a computer for the ham jack with internet capability is always handy. I think that that's almost become a standard in the ham jack anymore. Interface for digital modes. If your radio is not fortunate enough, like a lot of the newer radios, to have the interface built into it, it's nice to have that. But get the best that you can afford and something that you're comfortable with. So when you talk about the antenna, wire antennas are good. I'm using wire antenna here because unfortunately back in 2022, I lost my tower, my beam, and all my stuff to a tornado that come through my part of Ohio. And after finally recovering all of the house damages and yard damages and shed damages and all the other stuff, I'm finally this summer looking at maybe getting the tower and stuff back in the air. But for the last 3 years, 3.5 years, I've been using an off-center fed dipo, and I think just casually operating, I've worked about 175 countries. So, and that's really not trying, just, working them as they come by, or I sit down and get on the air and call CQ and people come back. So dipos, single, multi-band are always good. End feds will work. Vertical, single, multi-band, flagpoles, Yagis, beams, single, multi-band, all that stuff is great. It's almost a list here is almost from the easiest to deploy to the most difficult or requires the most work. So what about QSOs and logging? Well, for QSOs and logging, of course, this is where a computer comes in handy. You can still use paper. There's nothing wrong with that. The league still accepts paper applications and stuff for DXCC. That's not a problem. Again, most QSOs are short, name, QTH, weather, etc. Paper or computer logging is acceptable. Paper works, but it is manual. So, it's hard to get automation out of paper. Computer logging is preferred because it can track your QSOs, it can track your progress, it can show whether or not the QSO is confirmed. And but at the end of the day, the most important thing here is to have fun, no matter what you're doing. So when we talk about QSLs, paper, electronic, or both, well, DXCC does require to have confirmation to count, whether that's a QSL card or whether that's an LOTW, Logbook of the World confirmation. I still like to get traditional QSL cards, even after 50 years. I still get a thrill out of opening up an envelope and seeing that paper card. And I really like the handwritten ones the best because then that's somebody that actually took the time. It really means something to them to write that out. And but I miss the old cards that had the notes on them where somebody would make a little comment about the QSO or something. Seems like those days might be gone. But traditional QSL cards are great. Logbook of the World is the easiest and requires the least amount of paperwork because it keeps everything organized for you. Although it can be a combination of both. So you work some super rare entity and they don't confirm via LOTW, only by paper card. Don't worry. You can get the credit for that confirmation, that QSO and that entity with a paper card, and it counts on your DXCC total altogether. There's not a separate DXCC total paper versus electronic. It's all one. Unfortunately, EQSL and QRZ logbook do not count for DXCC. I don't know if that'll ever change, but I don't think it's very probable that that will. So you're still talking about QSOs and QSLs and equals DXCC. So when you get your QSO, you make your QSO, you get your QSL, you get 100 of those together, you submit them, you get DXCC. You can submit per LOTW for QSOs for credit. You can use the online or manual DXCC application. Checker can submit the form on your behalf. So if you got a field card checker in your area, like I am, they can walk you through the process, help you with the forms, help you get everything done. That way you don't have you if you can help it at all, you never want to send your paper cards to headquarters. There's been too many horror stories of paper cards getting lost once they got to headquarters. And you spend a lifetime collecting these cards, and it may be from something that's only on the air once in every 15, 20 years, and the card is no longer available. You're going to be pretty upset if you send it somewhere and it gets lost. Once you've done all that, your DXCC certificate is awarded. All right, so you got your first 100. You're sitting there, your chest all popped out. You're ready to go. So then what? What's next? Well, taking those next steps is going past the first 100, of course. Polishing up your best practices, operating skills, the pile up, the expeditions. That's what we're going to talk about in this now. All right, so now what? You got your DXCC. You want to continue adding to those totals, right? You want to earn DXCC maybe on multiple bands. That's always fun, right? So it's like right now I'm sitting at 9-band DXCC, and I'm 9 entity confirmations away from having 10-band DXCC. So it can be done. Just takes time and persistence, as we said earlier. Work towards honor row, which is 331. Now this is that's the real journey. I tell you, I've been hamming now almost 50 years. I got on honor row. Made the contact that got me on honor row a week before I lost my antenna on the tornado. So timing was on my side, if you want to look at it that way. I try to look at the positive side of it, but honor row is really a big achievement, and you're in it for the long haul when you get there. Work towards your DXC challenge, and this is taking all the bands that you've worked contacts on, that you've worked eligible entities that you have confirmed. There's 3,400 and some total band, what they call band slots, and that's what goes towards your challenge. Your initial buy-in to challenge is 1,000. Currently, like myself, I'm at 2455 in challenge, and my goal is to get to 2,500. I doubt I'll ever see 3,000. That's a very special club to be 3,000 and above. Share your stories, just like I'm doing here this evening. Recruit new DXers. That's what I'm hoping to recruit some new DXers. Make and work towards your personal goals, really. So every year I set out with personal goals in ham radio that I want to make a contact every day. I want to work 200 entities this year. I want to finish DXCC on 6 meters. Whatever it is, and then I track those through the years just for my own satisfaction, not for anybody else or anything else, but for my own satisfaction. So what are some of the best practices? Well, we're going to talk about the operator, learning about DX and the bands, recognizing patterns, and timing your calls. So when you talk about the DXCC, the operator, number one rule in all of DXing is listen. Listen to what the DX is telling you. If the DX is calling CQ and they say up 5, that means that you need to split your transmitter and receiver VFOs so that you're transmitting up 5 and not on top of the DX station. He may say, I'm calling, only the Kilo 5. And hopefully everybody that's not a Kilo 5 will stop calling at that point, right? Follow the DX operator's instructions. That's the easiest and quickest way to get in the log, but all that takes listening. You need to understand the timing of the DX station and what he's doing and understand when to transmit. And again, like we said earlier, don't be afraid to get on the band and call CQDX. Hopefully not on top of the DX station. So then you got the DXCC, more about the operator. You want to make sure you're using proper phonetics. I mean, you can always have these cute phonetics. Like my call used to be NW4P, November Whiskey 4 Papa, and a friend of mine say, not worth 4 pennies. Well, that's cute for 2 meters, but it's not very good in a DX pileup, right? So you want to make sure you're using international phonetics, because you got to remember, the guy that's running the pileup on the other end, his English may not be that good, right? And he may not understand the slang and all that. And we think that we have trouble with their dialect. You can only imagine the trouble they have with our dialect, right? Whether you're from Texas or California or Appalachia like myself or something like that, we all have our different dialects, our different accents and different stuff like that. So they got the same challenges on their end. Use your spotting clusters. Keep up with the current DX bulletins. W1AW from the ARL sends out a bulletin every week. There's a lot of free bulletins out there, like DXworld.net is an excellent source for DX information. The Daily DX, which is a paid subscription to basically you get an email every day about the current DX and what's happening and what's not happening, or what's changed, or what's got canceled, or what's coming up, and all those kind of things. And then, if you can, join a DX club. You'd be surprised how much information you can get from these guys. Some of their DX clubs have some of the best operators that are out there, because they've learned the ropes, they've listened, they understand it, they know their rigs. So ask them questions. And again, I know I keep saying this, but when you're on there chasing DX and you're listening to a DX station, you have to listen. So what's this thing? We keep talking about this pileup. Well, just imagine it's like a giant roar. So picture yourself in a crowded room that's noisy, and you're sitting at a table talking to somebody, right? And you can't hardly hear the person on the other side because you keep hearing everybody else in the room, right? That's what a DX pileup, when the operator on the other end of the DX pileup, the DX themselves, that's what it's like to them. They're sitting there themselves and they call CQDX, this is K8DV. And let's say I'm some rare entity, and all at once I let off the microphone and 2,000, 3,000 guys start shouting their call sign all at the same time. So you could imagine what that sounds like. And so he's sitting there going, well, who do I answer? Well, first of all, he's got to try to figure out, can I hear a call sign out of all that mess? Well, the other side, they're like a bunch of cats in a fight, right? They're trying to figure out, is he going to come back to me, or did I hear my call sign? What did I hear? So that's where the listening pays off. And then you can recognize the type of pattern that he's working, right? That you hear him and he's going, up 5 to 10, which means he wants you to be transmitting 5 to 10 KCs from where he's at. Well, if you sit there and listen, you'll find out he works somebody at 5, and then he works somebody at 7, and then he works somebody at 10, then he works somebody at 7, then he works somebody at 5. And so you catch him in this pattern, right? So then okay, he's working somebody at 5 right now. I'm going to go up at 7 and start calling, because I know in a few minutes he's going to be there. So listen. That's where the listening comes in, and paying attention to what's happening. The big thing, don't be intimidated. Put that call sign out there, shout, scream in the microphone. What do you got to do, right? All, again, like I said earlier, is what my dad told me. It's all is fair in love and war and DX. But again, you want to follow the DX instructions. If he's telling you stand by, I'm looking for the Kilo 5, stand by and let him work the Kilo 5, because a good DX operator is going to continue to try to work that K5 until he gets them in the log. Because if he don't, and all at once he goes, well, he quits trying to work that K5 and he goes, Kilo 8 Delta Victor. Now the rest of the pileup knows that he is not committed when he goes to a call sign. So they're all just going to keep calling. So, so listen to the pileup. If you can, in some rigs, they got dual receivers in them. If you can listen to both sides of the pileup, you can get your timing to when he's calling CQ and lets off the mic or the key, and you can sort of follow in the, if he's working up 5 to 10, you can follow in the second receiver where he's at and sort of get an idea how he's traveling and follow the behavior of the pileup at the same time you're listening to him. So what about this thing we keep calling a DXpedition, right? And some people say, well, aren't they just on vacation? Well, I don't know about you, but I have seen, and I've got several good friends from the Southwest Ohio DX Association that I'm in that, excuse me, have been on many DXpeditions, and it is no walk in the park, especially on some of these that are on cold weather DXpeditions and the special gear you got to have. Some of the islands that may sound like paradise out in the Pacific are not, right, because of the bugs, the other stuff you got out there, the severe heat and all the other stuff that goes with that. It sounds like it would be great, but believe me, these guys are not on vacation. And are they really needed? Well, when you think about it, there's probably at least, I don't know the exact number, but probably 50 to 75 entities that there's no hams there. And the only way they ever get activated is if somebody goes there and puts it on the air. So that's why they happen, because the guys like to be the ones that go and take that challenge, put it on the air, make those contacts, do that thing. I mean, we got one coming up here later on this year to the Day of Sheo, right? KP5, which is down just 14 miles off the coast of Puerto Rico, right? And that's going to be on the air for the first time, I think, in 17 years. Well, you can imagine how many people want to work that, right? But there's nobody lives there, right? There's no habitat at all there. So, and it takes special permission from Fish and Wildlife to get permission to land there. And then to set up a station and all that stuff is a whole other thing, a can of worms with that as well. So why do they happen? Because they know guys like me are going to be out there chasing them, wanting to work them, get them in the log, right? And that's how they feed their rush, right? It gives them a rush. It's their drug, if you would, to sit there and be on the other end of that pile up and sit there for an hour on end, handing out QSOs to us needy folks here in the States, right? So, and why don't they go to the one I need? Well, maybe it's because it's ham radio's banned, right? We're not going to see North Korea on the air anytime soon. Is that a reason not to get on and chase the X? No. Someday it was on in 2002. It might be on again. You just never know. Turkmenistan is not on the air. They don't allow ham radio at all, right? And it's pretty aggravating because that's one of the last 6 that I need. And I probably worked it who knows how many times as a novice and as a general back in the late 70s and 80s when they were on all the time. But in all my moves and all my stuff, I lost all my logbooks. So I can't even go back and even try to get a card or anything. So that's, would I love them to come on? Yep, I need them and North Korea. Will I get them? I don't know, but that doesn't mean I'm going to quit chasing. So what's the cost? Well, a lot of these DXpeditions, and we got a really big one coming up here next month, the Beauvais Island, right? Beauvais Island is in the middle of nowhere. It's called it's literally a place that you can't get there from here. And there was an explorer, I can't remember his name, said it's the absolute worst place on the earth, on the planet. So there's a whole team going there. The total cost for that DXpedition is approaching $1 million. and it's the buy-in is probably about 40,000 per person that's going on that trip. So, and then that's not counting all the donations and all the other stuff from the DX community to make it happen. Companies like DX Engineering donating antennas and other equipment and stuff to make it successful. And then just imagine these guys are going to take essentially 2 months, about 2 months out of their life to go do this DXpedition. So it's serious, and these guys deserve respect, and we wish them nothing but the best of luck. But they do it not because they're getting paid, because they love DXing, and they love being able to hand out that what we call an ATNO or an all-time new one for a lot of guys. And Bouvet will be an all-time new one for me. So believe me, I'm looking forward to it. Because when you get up to 334, new ones don't show up every day. So DXCC hints and some final thoughts here is be available in as many bands and modes as possible. I always refer to modes as tools in my toolbox, right? I didn't work digital for a lot of years. I didn't work FT8 or any of that for many years. And then finally I said, I've got to start working it. I got to learn about it. Well, if I wouldn't have been working FT8, I would not have got on the honor roll when I did. Because the guy that I got the QSO with only worked FT8. And so when they come on the air, you don't know what mode they may show up in. They may show up on sideband, CW, digital. You want to be prepared for whatever that is so that you can get them in the log, right? So I consider, sideband, CW, and digital all to be tools. Be available in as many bands as you can, even if it's a wire antenna or makeshift antenna or something like that. You want to be able to have that band coverage, right? Put up some kind of multi-band dipole to cover the bands that you don't have for the others, because as sure as I'm sitting here doing this presentation, the station you want to work is going to show up on a band that you're not capable of getting on. Believe me, it happens. Listen. Oh, and by the way, listen some more. That's the whole key, is to listen. On the other flip side of that, don't be afraid to call CQ. Use your spotting networks. I tend to use a DXSummit.fi, I believe it is. And what's the other one? I can't remember what it was. Oh, well. And then, but yeah, use a spotting network, something you're comfortable with. There's a bunch of them out there. I advise you, if you're going to chase DX, chase the DXCC award, get on LOTW. It's a little bit of a hassle at first with the postcard, the other stuff you got to get and things to get signed up, but it's well worth it. And then use computer logging. Even the logbook programs that we have out there will easily run on a low-end Windows 11 machine without any problem at all. Some more hints and stuff is before you buy that amp, think about upgrading your antenna. Antenna. I go back again. I know I've quoted my dad here a couple of times, but I got to quote him on this one. I can remember him saying, little antenna, little signal, big antenna, big signal. So upgrade your antenna first before you start talking about amplifiers. Learn CW. I know I mentioned that earlier, or at least enough to be able to recognize your call sign and 5NN, right? Because that's almost, the signal report's almost always going to be 5NN on CW when you're working a DXpedition. I had a friend of mine, that's all he knew on CW, but he was very successful. He had 200 and some countries, entities confirmed on CW using just that method. And your brain, even if that's all you recognize, is much better than any decoder that I've ever seen out there. Use a keyer for both voice and CW. If you got it, it'll make you more consistent, because the call sign will be sent perfectly every time on a CW keyer, and on a voice keyer, you can record it till you get it exactly the way you want it. Again, I know I've said it, join a DX club. follow the DX code of conduct, which we're going to look at here in just a minute. But after all, of all this stuff, you want to have fun, as DXCC can be a journey of a lifetime. And I've got one of my dad's quotes down here. He used to tell me, he says, DXCC is a journey. It is not a destination. So here's the code of conduct. I'm not going to read all this, but you'll notice the very first line is listen and listen and then listen again. I can't stress that enough, how important it is to listen. It'll increase. It sounds non-intuitive, but the more you listen, the better chance you have of getting into the log, because you'll understand the timing, you'll know when to transmit, and all those kind of things. Any questions?
Would you say largely that FT8 has replaced PSK31 for that kind of digital mode?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know when the last time I heard anybody on PSK31, and RTTY, although is active at times, even RTTY is almost gone now because of FT8.
How about any of the like JS8 call?
It's not very popular on the expeditions because it hasn't been as well developed as FT8 for fast mode contacts, where they put in some shortcuts, multiple streams. They put in the Fox and Hound kind of thing for FT8, and of course we could do a whole presentation on FT8, of course. But there's things that they can make QSOs a lot faster with FT8 than some of the other digital modes.
Any other questions? Comments? Well, Dave,
did I get it wrong?
Yeah, no, that was an absolutely fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.